What is going on, everybody? My name is Jeff Lightsy Jr. That is Jeff Lightsy Jr. here with the Black Boss channel and Victory Formation. Thank you guys for tuning in. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button, like, share, subscribe as you file into the room because we have an interesting topic today. Right here on my YouTube channel, we discuss HBCU football just pretty much every day. There's some news that have come out, some conference realigning that has taken place throughout the country. Team Hampton joining a new conference, this happening. Some Jackson State players are down playing in a Hawaii bowl game. But today I'm here not to talk about Jackson State because we talk about Jackson State and Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, all the time. But I'm here today to actually talk about Eddie Robinson. Eddie Robinson, the legendary Grambling State, Grambling College head coach that did it for 5 decades. That's right, 5 decades. A lot of you all may know a lot about Eddie Robinson, but folks of my generation, I don't think we give the credit and the flowers. A big thing nowadays is to give people their flowers. We don't give Eddie Robinson his flowers enough, RIP, and we're going to do that today by looking throughout the history of HBCU sports, of HBCU football, and the impact that was left by Eddie Robinson. So buckle up your seatbelts, get ready to stay tuned right after, because we're going to talk about all of that, Eddie Robinson, right after the bumper. Hello, and welcome back. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's the Jeff Lightsy Jr., the Black Boss channel, and Victory Formation. Now, today, like I said, we're going to be talking about the legend that is Eddie Robinson. Please leave in the chat. Please leave in the comments your first memory, your first thought of head coach Eddie Robinson, of the Grambling football team, whatever that is. Please, your favorite player during that time. We're talking about a period of 5 decades, literally 57 years of head coach Eddie Robinson. Before there was a Deion Sanders, before there was Doug Williams as a head coach or Hugh Jackson or whoever, there was Eddie Robinson, Connell Maynor, Dooley, any of these guys, Dancy, Jerry Rice being interested. There was Eddie Robinson. Before there was Joe Paterno being a legendary coach or Nick Saban or any of these guys, there was Eddie Robinson. I don't think people understand the impact that not only Eddie Robinson had on HBCU sports, but on college football. I'd certainly know I didn't have this impact. And for you guys in the chat, for you guys in the comments, you guys can also give me history lessons because this is all new information to me. Eddie Robinson, I always knew of the name. I always knew Eddie Robinson was a historic, legendary coach. There's awards named after him. There's museums. There's all kinds of stuff with Eddie Robinson. But being 26 years old and Eddie Robinson coaching his final game in college, I think in 95, 96, he coached his final game. Yeah, 97. So he coached his final game in 1997, the 97 season. I'd be lying if I said I just had all this history and had all this knowledge of the greatness of Eddie Robinson. I'd be lying if I said that because that just simply isn't true. And so now what I'm going to do, because I have this platform, because I have this channel, I'm going to talk about Eddie Robinson because a lot of people don't know about the greatness of Eddie Robinson. If you're not from Louisiana, if you don't follow HBCU sports like a lot of you do, you guys just don't understand. Yes, CFL, he was the first superstar head coach before Deion Sanders, before Coach Prime. Coach Prime is kind of, he's a mogul. He's taking advantage of social media. He's taking advantage of his platform. He's taking advantage of his name. He's taking advantage of all these things to become what we call, he was a superstar player, he was a superstar personality, now he's a superstar head coach at the SWAC level. But Eddie Robinson was the first superstar head coach at the SWAC level decades before Coach Prime. So shout out to CFL, Marcus Johnson, Kyra Clark, Joseph Williams. Thank you all for tuning in. So we're going to actually pull up, which I didn't know this was a thing, the Eddie Robinson Museum website. So this is how legendary this man is. This man was the first coach in all of college football to reach 400 wins, and he has an actual museum. So we're going to go to the Eddie Robinson Museum website and read Read a little bit about the legend that is Eddie G. Robinson. It says, for legendary Grambling State University football coach Eddie G. Robinson, football has always been the driving force motivating one of the most successful men to have ever set foot on a football field. Coach Robinson spent 57 seasons consistently fielding stellar football teams and guiding his young charges to successful lives both on and off the gridiron. He has earned an unprecedented 408 wins. Let's think about this, guys. 408 wins to only 165 losses and 15 ties. So let's think about that number. 57 seasons as a head football coach. A lot of people don't make it to 57 years old. Like, let's just be honest. A lot of people don't even make it to 57 years old, let alone do one thing for 57 years. That is what Coach Robinson was able to do. Yeah, this ain't a diss. You're right, CFL. This ain't a diss to Coach Prime. This is just the facts. Eddie Robinson was the first legendary coach. He had 400 wins when people didn't think 400 wins was possible. You got to think the most games you can play in a college football season is 15. That's the very most. And that's now. Then it was probably closer to 12 or 13. So we're talking about 12 to 15 games, and you get 400 wins. Even if you win every single game, it's going to take decades. This man coached for 57 years. 57 years. He laid the foundation that he walked so guys like Deion Sanders and Hugh Jackson and Eddie George and all these other guys could fly. Because 57 years at one place at Grambling, that's crazy. That is insane. That is insane. Let's keep reading. More than 200 of his players went on to play in the National Football League, including Super Bowl 22 MVP quarterback Doug Williams, who would ultimately succeed Robinson at Grambling as the head coach in 1998. Though ultra successful, Coach Robinson has always remained humble, crediting his players, his family, his loving wife Doris, the media, and football fans from all over the world for making the name Eddie Robinson synonymous with the best that college football has to offer. Yo, this man, let's think about 57 seasons. I want to take a look at something. Now, we all know the Wikipedia ain't the best, you know what I'm saying? But they give us some context. Coach Eddie Robinson started coaching Grambling. I want to show you some because when I saw this, my jaw dropped and I couldn't believe what was going on. So Coach Eddie Robinson started coaching at Grambling in the 40s. Look at this. He started coaching at Grambling. He became the football coach in 1941. In 1943, he also became the basketball coach. So from 1943 to 56, I mean, last I checked, that's 13 years, guys. From 43 to 56, he not only was the head football coach, he was the head basketball coach at Grambling. He was not only the head football coach at Grambling, he was the head basketball coach. If you can't see what I'm reading, I'm looking over right here. So from 1941 to 1997, he coached at one place. That was Grambling. That, my friends, is remarkable. That like how in the world do you coach both the football and the basketball team at the same time? like that is just incredible. That alone is an incredible feat. And not only are you coaching these programs, you're racking up 400 wins. You're the first coach to reach 400 wins. Now, I think Paterno ended up getting 400 wins, but we kind of know what took place with Joe Paterno and Penn State. We don't have to dive into that, but we understand what took place for him to get those 400 wins, and it wasn't anything good. Let's just be honest. That's just that. Last I checked, there was no Joe Paterno scandals taking place at Grambling during the Eddie Robinson reign. We're talking about over 200 guys that made it to the NFL. I think over 180 of those men were actually drafted in the NFL draft. Eddie Robinson is a legend beyond legend. He also went on to win 9 black college, according to Wikipedia. Now, obviously, this isn't always factual, but 9 black college national championships, 17 SWAC titles. 9 black college national championships, 17 SWAC titles. Now, I love me some Coach Prime. I talk about Coach Prime almost every single day. But we understand what it takes to win 9 black college national championships and 17 SWAC titles, while also coaching the men's football team and the men's basketball team as the head coach. Yeah, Coach Robinson was different. like Coach Robinson was completely different. Like he was on something else. He was on something totally different. Before we go back to the Coach Robinson story, what's taking place with Coach Robinson, I find it interesting. So we're talking about the greatness of Coach Robinson. He was the first SWAC superstar head coach. He was way before his time. He won 400 career games. But there was something interesting that someone said on my channel. Mr. Kyle T. Mosley, the runner of HBCU Legends. Kyle T. Mosley, HBCU Legends. He came on here last week, and we were talking about Deion Sanders, Jerry Rice, and he brought up Coach Rob, Eddie Robinson. So Kyle, for those of you who don't know, is from New Orleans. And I want to say Kyle said his father, and he called him Rob because he knew him. He knew Eddie Robinson, Coach Robinson, from growing up. But Kyle said something that was very interesting. Kyle said something I had never heard before on my platform. He said Coach Rob actually was promoting some of the top talented players from HBCUs to go and play at not necessarily Power 5, but the big-time programs. This is what Kyle came on here and said, and we're going to listen to it. And I just want to hear what you guys have to say about it because I had never heard that before. You know, there was a lull, obviously, when Coach Robinson retired in the 90s, HBCU sports, HBCU football in particular, wasn't talked about the same way that it was during his 57-year tenure. You know, he put in 200 guys in the league. And then, Deion Sanders has talked about how when he came to Jackson State, there was no one from HBCUs that were drafted into the NFL his first year. There was no one. So to go from 200 guys, over 180 guys drafted, 200 guys in the league, 180 guys drafted, to no one, something had to happen. And Kyle brought up an interesting point that I had just never heard before, but I thought it was super, super interesting. So let's take a listen. This was Kyle on, speaking with me about Coach Eddie Robinson and what he wanted from black players. Let's take a listen.
You have the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s. There was a lull in HBCU sports.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people say that's because the talent was going elsewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, a lot of people don't realize this, but Coach Rob wanted the talent to go elsewhere.
This is Coach Rob of who? Coach Rob of who?
Rob, Eddie Robinson.
Eddie Robinson. Okay. Just making sure.
He was talking to a lot of these coaches, big name college coaches, and saying, hey, you guys got to look at some of these guys because they need to get the recognition, the prominence, and the talent. They had that talent that was above everyone else. So he was a proponent of that. Some of the guys in the SWAC and MEAC didn't really care for him to be a proponent for it.
Yeah, so that was interesting. That was interesting because I had never heard that before. Kyle brought that to the table and I had never heard that before. I was like, whoa, I just never heard that before. But I knew, and what is interesting is I knew that about the integration of what took place during the 60s. So I'm from the state of Kentucky. For those of you who don't know, I'm from the state of Kentucky. And the first person to integrate the SEC, which is the football powerhouse now, mainly because they get all the best black players from the South. The first player to integrate, the first black player to ever play on any SEC team was a man by the name of Nate Northington. He played or integrated the University of Kentucky. In Kentucky, because Kentucky wasn't Georgia or Alabama, it was a little more north, but it still was considered a southern state, and they played in the SEC. Nate Northington integrated UK because the SEC kind of figured, Big Ten had integrated and teams out west had integrated and some other, like pretty much all the conferences integrated except the SEC. And so they were like, we probably should start to integrate a little bit because we're starting to look really, really bad. And a man by the name of Nate Northington from Louisville, Kentucky, the same place I'm from, a man by the name of Nate Northington decided to attend. He got a scholarship offer from UK, and he, along with his parents and the governor of Kentucky at the time, this is a story he told me, Nate Northington, you look it up. He has a statue out front of the University of Kentucky football. He has a statue there. He told me that the governor was there, and they kind of talked him into signing with UK, and he ultimately became the first black player to ever touch a field when he touched the field against Ole Miss as a member of the Kentucky Wildcats, as the first black player to integrate the SEC. And that took place in the 60s. That did take place in the 60s. So to hear Kyle say that Coach Rob wanted his players or wanted black players to end up eventually going to some of those powerhouse programs was interesting because I once again, I never heard that before, but the reasoning made sense. It wasn't like he just said something that just didn't make any sense. He wanted those players to get more exposure. The same things people are saying now, the same things that people are saying now about, the kids choosing the Power Fives over the HBCUs. It sounds like according to Kyle, Coach Rob also felt that same way. The difference between then and now, then it could make sense. I could see that. Obviously, the teams of the SWAC, the teams in the MEAC, they wouldn't be happy about that, but they could be understandable because if you went to a Grambling, if you went to a Jackson State, if you went to a whatever, you wouldn't get the same exposure at those HBCUs as you would at an Alabama, at a USC, at a Florida, etc., etc. That is just the truth because back then, we didn't have 24-hour cable service. We didn't have 24-hour streaming. We didn't have 24-hour internet. We didn't have 24-hour TV. TV actually went off at a certain time. Certain people like myself, it's hard to believe because to actually understand that TV would cut off after a certain while. I remember listening to a Lenny Williams song, and he said, I watched television, the television went off, and it blew my mind because I had never heard a television going off. But besides that, so that is why I could see, I could actually grasp that concept. I could actually understand why someone as big as Eddie Robinson would say, hey, maybe some of our best players should go to some of those, now they're considered Power 5 schools, but some of the more prominent schools. I'm not saying that took place. That's what Kyle's saying took place. I just can understand if that did take place. Now, when I posted this online, some people came and said, hey, that's not true. That's not true. That's not what Coach Eddie Robinson wanted. That's not what Coach Eddie Robinson stood for. I don't know it's true. I didn't talk to Eddie Robinson. RIP. I never got a chance to speak to him. But I could understand how that could take place. The difference between that then and this now is that there is a 24-hour sports cycle. There is a 24-hour news cycle. There are things like YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Snapchat, whatever. There's a bunch of things for exposure. There are podcasts and network television and all kinds of cable networks and all kinds of stuff, streaming services that these players can get that same exposure. The same exposure that they can get in Alabama, you can get it at Jackson State. The same exposure you can get it at LSU, you can get it at Grambling or at a Southern or at a Mississippi Valley, et cetera, et cetera. So those are where the differences are. Those are where the differences are that took place when Coach Eddie Robinson was taking place in coaching and with a guy like Hugh Jackson at the same school, just during a totally different time period. And I wanted to do this video because as I've been reporting, Coach Hugh Jackson is coming out with a big announcement this week. I don't know what the announcement is, but I was told that it is massive. A lot of people believe that it has something to do with NIL. I don't know. Maybe it does. But a massive announcement is coming from Grambling before the end of the week. Now, let's continue reading about Coach Robinson because I think it is important that our people know about Coach Robinson. Guys around my age group, the 20-somethings, you don't hear about Coach Robinson enough for someone that accomplished as much as he did for college football to be one of the most talked about, one of the most covered, one of the biggest things in the country. How do we not hear enough about the man who won 400 games, who was the first ever to win 400 games? How do we not hear enough about a man who won a number of Black college national championships? How do we not hear enough about a man who won 400 games and spent 57 seasons at one school? To me, that's a crying of shame. That is a shame. That is a shame that we do not talk more about Coach Robinson. Well, we're doing that tonight, so let's continue on. It says on October 7th, 1995, Coach Robinson became the first, not Black, the first college football coach to break the 400-win barrier, a mark once thought to be unreachable. The 42-6 triumph over Mississippi Valley State came before a national televised audience on ESPN2. Quote, "Nobody has ever done or will ever do what Eddie Robinson has done for this game," said legendary coach Joe Paterno. "Our profession will never, ever be able to repay Eddie Robinson for what he has done for this country and for the profession of football." The time after Robinson proved that hard work, dedication, and determination could lead to unimaginable accomplishments. Neither of Coach Robinson's parents graduated from high school, but they encouraged their son's desire to stay in school and earn a college degree. A young Robinson moved on from high school to become a star quarterback at Leland College under Reuben Turner, a Baptist preacher who introduced Robin to the concept of a playbook and coaching clinics. With no coaching opportunities available following college, Robinson took a job in a Baton Rouge feed mill before learning from a relative that there was an opening for a football coach at Louisiana Negro Normal and Industrial Institute. That was Grambling before it was Grambling. Louisiana Negro Normal and Industrial Institute, later on to become Grambling State University. After an interview with school president, Dr. Ralph Waldo Emerson Jones, Robinson was chosen as the 6th head coach of the Tigers. It didn't take Coach Rob, as he affectionately known, long to prove his work. Following his initial season, Coach Robinson took command and dismissed some players who he felt were not living up to expectations. That's tough. Think about that. You come in at this school, at Grambling or Louisiana Normal, Negro Normal Industrial Institute, and you dismiss players as soon as you get there. Like it's pretty gutsy. It's pretty bold to come in there and dismiss guys, but if they weren't living up to the expectations, that what makes you a good coach. That is program foundation setting. As foundation setting for a program. The results came soon after, as the next season, Coach Robinson's team posted a perfect 9-0 season, with the team going undefeated, untied, and unscored upon. This man went 9-0 and his team didn't give up a point. How do you go a season 9-0 and not give up a point? Unscored upon. Make sure, am I reading that right? Let me know. Unscored upon. That's pretty impressive. Grambling was only the second collegiate team to have shut out every opponent, a feat which has not been repeated since. Yeah, I bet it hasn't, because that's pretty freaking impressive. By 1949, Grambling's football program was receiving national acclaim after former Tigers running back Paul Tank Younger signed with the Los Angeles Rams of the National Football League, thus becoming the first player from a historically Black college to be taken in the NFL. Now, let me know in the chat, who knew that? Who knew that Paul Tank Younger in 1949 out of Grambling became the first player from a Black college to be taken in the NFL? Who knew? Let me know in the chat if you knew that. Let me know in the comments if you knew that, because I did not know that. I'd be honest. I'd be lying if I said I knew that, because I did not know that. I didn't know when it took place. I didn't know he played for Coach Eddie Robinson. I didn't know he came from Grambling. I didn't know any of these things. This is news to me, and I didn't know it happened that early. 1949. Let's continue on. In 1955, Grambling claimed the National Black College Championship by going 10-0, the best record in school history, and outscoring opponents by a 356-61 margin. After picking up 356 points in 10 games is 35 points per game, giving up only 6 points per game, by the way, just to kind of give you that margin. That's you're averaging 35 a game, almost 36 a game, and you only gave up 6 points per game. That's pretty freaking incredible. After picking up his 100th career coaching victory against Bethune-Cookman in 1957, Coach Robinson and his Tigers joined the SWAC in 1959. The following season, he led the Tigers to the first of 17 SWAC titles under his guidance. Another of Robinson's former Tigers made NFL waves in 1963 as the late Jonas Buck Buchanan became the first player from an HBCU to have been chosen first overall in the NFL draft. Now, who knew that? Grambling fans, where are you guys at? Who knew that Buck Buchanan was the first HBCU player to ever go number 1 overall in 1963 in the draft? I didn't know it. This is all, like I'm saying, I am on a history lesson. We're on this history lesson together. If you're along with me, we're all along. I'm on this history lesson with you because I did not know any of this. Buck Buchanan was the first player from an HBCU to go number 1 overall in 1963. Who was the last player to go number 1 overall from an HBCU in the NFL draft? Somebody let me know in the chat. Somebody let me know in the comments. Who was the last player? Buck Buchanan was the first in 1963. Who was the last player to go number 1 overall in the NFL draft from an HBCU? I'm just curious on who that is, or if it's happened since. I know Steve McNair. I want to say Steve McNair went number 3 overall out of Alcorn, but who was the last one to go number 1 overall? I do not know. Let's continue on. By 1984, Coach Robinson was poised to become college football's winningest coach after surpassing Amos Alonzo Stagg with 314 coaching victories that year. He tied legendary Alabama coach Paul Bear Bryant 323 win mark with a 23-6 win over Oregon State, by the way, Power 5, by the way, before becoming the career wins leader the next week with a 27-7 victory over Prairie View A&M. Coach Robinson finally relinquished his reins to the Tigers following the 1997 season, but his contributions to the game will be remembered forever. Also, during the same year, he was officially inducted to the College Football Hall of Fame. The Football Writers of America Coach of the Year award is named after Coach Robinson. Grambling also named its football stadium the Eddie Robinson Stadium. Robinson graduated from McKinley High School in Baton Rouge, Louisiana in 1937. He went on to earn his bachelor's degree from Leland College in Baker, Louisiana. He went on to obtain his master's degree from the University of Iowa in 1954. Wow. Coach Robinson was different. Coach Robinson left a legacy that I knew was great, but even I didn't know was that great. Coach Robinson is someone who needs to continue. We need to continue to say that name. We need to continue to remember that name. We need to continue to acknowledge his accomplishments, both at an HBCU level, but just as at a college football level. Coach Robinson is a legend. And I just wanted to take a few minutes tonight to kind of recognize Coach Robinson, to kind of uplift Coach Robinson, to kind of talk about Coach Robinson and the contributions that he made not only to HBCU football, but to college football. Because without a Coach Robinson, there would be no Hugh Jackson. There would be no Deion Sanders. There would be none of these guys who have been able to, what we call game changers, just kind of bust through the door and make things happen. There will be no Travis Hunter going to Jackson State. There'll be no Kevin Coleman going to Jackson State. There will be none of these top guys going to Grambling, the top guys going to Southern, the top guys going, whether it's transfer portals or out of high school, going to these HBCUs if it wasn't for Coach Eddie Robinson. And he is the standard. He is what everybody is aspiring to be. None of them will ever be able to do that. We're talking about 57 years, 408 wins, 17 SWAC titles, and a number of Black college national championships. None of them will ever be able. They will all fall short They will all fall short of those accomplishments. But to aspire to be that is something that is great. I don't think college football analysts, whether it's on a national level, on a podcast level, on TV, on the internet, talk enough about Eddie Robinson. So I just wanted to take a few minutes tonight, to talk about the legend that is head coach Eddie Robinson. Leave your thoughts in the comments, your favorite memory of Grambling, your favorite memory of Coach Eddie Robinson, your favorite memory of his reign at Grambling and all the wins and the accomplishments and all the great things, from Doug Williams being the first black quarterback to win a Super Bowl, to Buck Buchanan being the first player drafted in the NFL, number 1 overall from an HBCU, to his other player being the first black player, Los Angeles Rams, 1949 in the NFL. Like, it's just, wow. Like, I just didn't know this stuff. Like, this is the stuff that we need to talk about more. These are the things that we need, that needs to be blasted more. These are the things that need to be spoken about more to everyone. And I'm just glad that I was able to read that and share with you some of the information that I learned. Once again, my name is Jeff Lightsy Jr. Thank you, Jeannie. Thank you for tuning in, because Coach Robinson, he doesn't get talked about enough. I get it. A lot of people understand he's associated with the greatness of Grambling, but it's not just about Grambling. It's not even just about HBCUs or the SWAC. This man impacted college football, period. And he was a great, like an all-time great. So thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button on your way out. Thank you, guys. And you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, Jeff Lightsy Jr., for more HBCU content, all things HBCU content, the Black Boss channel for all things Black men perspective. Thank you guys for tuning in. Hit the thumbs up button on your way out, and I will see you next time. Peace.